Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make this bracelet that I'm calling little fans or crystal fans, probably crystal fans. And it's a pretty simple process. It's, I would say, a little bit more advanced project simply because of the fact that you're sewing through these beads a lot and you need to be able to get through them well, and a little bit more experience will help you do that. Otherwise, it's a very simple process. It turns out really pretty. Each unit just makes this little shape of fan. We make the C shape first and then put the embellishment for the little bead in the middle, and it turns out really cute, I think. So anyway, I am going to try to slide this on, which I probably won't be able to do, but I'm going to try to slide this on and show you what it looks like on. And there we go. So this is what this looks like on the wrist. I'm going to back up a little bit here so you can see it in full. And there's my clasping. I used a little box clasp, and that's what this looks like. So let's go ahead and look and see what it takes to make this particular project. Okay, to start this project, you're going to pick up onto your needle your main bead. So if you're using a bicone, cuboid, or fire polish bead, you're going to pick that up. So this is what I'm using. I'm using a cuboid, then an 11-0, an 8-0, an 11-0, a cuboid, and an 11-0. Pick it up in that order. Start with your cuboid and end with your final 11-0. Then you're going to bring this down to the end of the thread. Let me back off just a little bit here, and we are going to leave a couple inches to tie a knot. And then we are going to go back through all of the beads on the thread. So just go back through every single one of them from the tail side up. Then hold onto your tail, hold onto your beads, and pull your working thread through. So just pull on your needle until you get all the way around to where it makes a little loop like this. Then grab both your tail and your working thread and just pull on them and just coerce those beads together like this. And then we are going to take our working thread and our tail and tie a knot. So I'm going to cross my working thread over my tail and pass my tail through the loop that results twice. And then I'm just going to pull both ends of the thread down, my working thread and my tail, until I have a knot, a very small knot right between these beads, just like this. And then I'm just going to move the tail out of the way here, and I am going to sew into the 11-0 seed bead here. Then I'm going to sew up into the cube on this side, on the side my thread is coming out of. And then I am going to go into the 11-0 and the 8-0 on top here and exit the 8-0, just like this. I am then going to pick up an 11-0 and an 8-0 seed bead, and I'm going to drop it down to my piece, just like that. Then I'm going to pick up my clasp, and I'm going to use a box clasp, so I'm going to go into the loop on the clasp. I can later separate my box clasp and do my other end, but I'm going to keep it together at this point. So just put this back together, and I'm going to go through the loop of my clasp. So any clasping you're using is fine, whether it be a lobster claw, toggle, whatever. Just go through the loop on the clasp. Just like that. Now we're going to go through the 8-0 seed bead and only the 8-0 seed bead right underneath the clasp, like this. We're going to hold on to that and pull our thread through, guiding the clasp down to the 8-0 seed bead, like this. Then we're going to pick up another 11-0 seed bead, and we're going to go into the opposite side of the 8-0 that we started to attach in. So we're going to go into this side now. Hold on to the unit and pull your thread through and pull that 11-0 down. And this is what you should have. We're going to sew through this again. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to hold it like this and I'm going to sew through. I'm coming out of the 8-0. I'm going to sew up into this 11-0 on the side my thread is coming out of, then up into the 8-0, and then into the clasp, just like this. And I'm going to hold on to it and pull it through. Then I am going to go back into the 8-0. So I'm coming out of the clasp. I go back into the 8-0 and into the 11-0 on the other side. And then back into the 8-0 seed bead. Excuse me, allergies are getting me today, so my voice is in and out. I'm just going to pull it down like that. Now, I want you to sew through that 1 or 2 more times, and then we will be back. Okay, so I have secured my clasping one more time, and this is what it looks like. I went ahead and trimmed down my tail. Now, if you feel that you need to sew through your base unit, the one that you're attached to, again, because it's a little off shape, or you want to make sure before you cut down your tail that it's nice and secure, you can go ahead and just sew all the way around and come back out this 8-0 here so that you're prepared for the next step. I went ahead and cut down my tail and sewed through one more time just so that I'm prepared and ready. Now, I am coming out of the 8-0 seed bead right here in the middle, and I'm going to go down into the 11-0 and the cube, just like this. And I'm going to make units like this one, but I will be sharing a bead from the previous unit to create it. So this is your base unit here. So what we're going to do now is we're coming out of the cube towards the bottom of the cube. We know we want to make a unit like this one, so we're coming out towards the 11-0. We know the first thing we do is pick up an 11-0 seed bead. And then we will pick up a cube, and then we will pick up an 11-0, an 8-0, an 11-0, and this is what you have, just like this, because we're going to share this cube. So we're just going to go directly into the cube that we're coming out of and go in on the opposite side from what you're coming out and pull this down. And now this is what you should have. And then, oh, my 11-0s are reflecting strange. Okay, so then we're going to go into the 11-0 seed bead here and secure this unit. So we're going to sew all the way around and come back out the 11-0. So we'll go into the cube here. Securing each unit is going to make it so that your units are nice and tight and laying in the proper position, and also gives a little strength to your bracelet. So sew all the way back around. You're coming out of this 11-0 here. We're going to go into the cube we attached to, and then we're going to go into the 11-0 in the center here between the two cubes, and then up into the next cube. And that is the units those are the units we will be making. So what we're going to do next is we're going to pick up an 11-0. Because we're coming out towards the cube, or towards the set of 3 seed beads, we will begin by picking up our 3 seed beads. That's what will dictate what you pick up next as you make these units. So we're coming out towards these. We're going to pick up an 11-0, an 8-0, an 11-0, and our cube. And then we're going to pick up an 11-0. We're sharing this cube here, so we're going to go into that cube, and just the cube, and pull this down. And this is what you should have. Now we're going to sew through the entire unit. So we're coming out of this cube, we sew through these 3 seed beads on top, pull the thread through, give a little tug and tighten everything up, go into the cube, then go into the 11-0 between the cubes, and go back into the cube you started in, the one you're attaching to. Now, in order to make our next one, we have to get to this cube. So we have to pass through these 3 seed beads on top again. This is why it is very important to use a small thread and a small needle. Now we are going through the cube that we started in, or that we just added, and this time we're coming out towards the 11-0, single 11-0 side. So because we're coming out towards that side, we pick up an 11-0. And then we pick up a cube, and then we pick up our 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 for the top of the cube. So this is what you should have, just like this. Then you go into the opposite side of the cube you're coming out of. So just go directly in. And we will secure this. So we'll go into the 11-0. Give a little tug between each one to tighten them up so that they are not really loose. If these are loose, they're not going to make the fan shape we want, and they are just going to look messy. So go through all of your beads, give a little tug in between each pass, and keep everything very nice and neat into the cube. So I'm just traveling all the way around the unit, into the 11-0, and then into the cube again. So you go all the way around, and then you work your way back to the cube that you need to attach your next one to. So we have 5 here, 5 of our cubes. We're going to make one more unit. Each of our components is going to have 6 cubes in it. So we're coming out towards the combination of 11-0, 8-0, 11-0. So we know we pick that up first. We pick up an 11-0, an 8-0, and 11-0, and then a cube, and then an 11-0. Just like that. Then we're going to go back into the cube we're coming out of on the opposite side and pull this down, and then we sew back through it. So I'm just sewing through all the beads in this little unit. Now I'm back in my connecting bead, so I need to travel over to my outside bead. So I'm going to go through the 3 excuse me, seed beads on top here. And this is what you should have. Now we need to secure and pull these together to get our nice fan shape, and then we need to add a little embellishment on the outside. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up into this cube right here, and we're going to sew through all of the 11-0 seed beads between each unit. So we're just going to start passing through the 11-0s. I have 3. Don't miss any, make sure you get them. And as I pull my thread, you can see it draws those 11-0s together. So then I'm going to go through the next 2, pull my thread, and just draw it into a nice C shape like this. And then we're going to go up into the cube, and that 11-0 is blocking me, so let me see if I can get around him. Right like that. I'm going to pull this and reestablish my tension, pulling on my thread, and this is what I have now. Let me back off just a little bit here. Then we're going to sew through all of these beads on top, and between each segment of 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, we're going to put a 15-0 seed bead so that we fill in all the gaps. So the first thing we're going to do is go up into the 11-0 and 8-0, and since my 11-0 is kind of off to the side, my third one, I'll pick him up separately. Just make sure that you come through all 3 on the segment. So I've got the 11-0, the 8-0, and the 11-0, and now I am going to pick up a 15-0 and place it between the 2 units of 11-0, 8-0, 11-0. So pick up a 15-0 and then slide through the next 3. And again, they're at an angle. If you need to just do 2 at a time, then pick up the third one, that is fine. Draw your 15-0 seed bead down between the segments of 11-0, 8-0, 11-0. And we're going to do that all the way around. So I'm coming out of this segment, I pick up a 15-0, and then I'm going to go into this segment. And again, the beads are at funny angles, so if you cannot manipulate through, just pick up where you left off. And then I'm going to pick up another 15-0 and travel through the next segment of 3 beads on the original unit. And then I'm going to pick one more 15-0 seed bead up right here, and I'm going to go through all 3 of these beads on the end. Now before you start this embellishment here, make sure this embellishment on the inside is nice and tight, and then as you work your way around, it will set the entire embellishment. But if it's loose, if you don't have it drawn together nice, then you're not going to be able to recover it by the time you do this entire embellishment. So now everything is nice and tight, looks good. I'm coming out of this 11-0 here. I need to start my next unit from this set. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use this set for the top of my embellishment. So what I have to pick up first is a cube, and then because we're not sharing any beads, we're going to have to pick up 2. We are using these here, but we are not using the cubes, so we're going to pick up 2. So I'm going to pick up a cube, an 11-0, and a cube, and we're going to go back through these 3 beads here. And because we just put our 15-0s on, it can be a little bit tricky to get through, so I just kind of move that, give myself a tiny bit of slack in there, and go through. Usually you can go through the 8-0, the 11-0 and the 8-0, but you can't get through the third one. But I got through all 3. So I'm passing through all 3 of those beads in this segment right here. And I am going to pull these beads down like this. Now this first one gives kind of a rather large split simply because of the embellishment we did. So what we're going to do is we are going to sew through this again. I'm going to go down into the cube and the 11-0 and the cube. Now this is what makes this a little bit more difficult, is getting through the beads as many times as you need to on your first one. But it's not horrible, it's just that there can be spots where it's a little bit tighter. So now I'm coming out of this cube, I have to pass through these 3 beads again. So I picked up the 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 in this original unit here to be part of my new unit. Now, because my first unit went this way, I want this next unit to go this way. So I will come through this bead and build this direction. So now I'm going to go down into this cube here and start my next unit. So because I'm coming out towards the 11-0, I pick up the single 11-0. Then I pick up 1 cube because I'm going to share this cube. Then I pick up an 11-0, an 8-0, and 11-0 for the top of the unit, just like this. Then I go down into the cube, pull this tight, and sew back through it. So I am coming out right next to my 11-0. I go into the 11-0, give a little tug to tighten it, and up into the cube. And then into the 3 11-0s on top, and then into the cube. And then I am going to go into the 11-0 here and the cube to get into position, because I've gone all the way around the unit. Now I have to go halfway around to begin my next unit. I'm coming up through the cube, and because I'm coming up through towards the 11, 8, 11, that is the beads that I will pick up. Those are the beads I will pick up. So I'm going to pick up an 11, 8, 11. The direction your thread is coming out dictates what set of beads you pick up first. So I picked up these three, and then I'm going to pick up my cube. And I was going to alternate my colors from dark to light to dark to light, but because I've done 2 of dark, I think I'll do 2 sets of dark and then I'll do 2 sets of light, since I don't want to redo this. So you can alternate your cube colors. You can make every single set a different color too. It doesn't matter. So I have picked up my 11, 8, 11 cube. Now I'm going to pick up an 11, and I have my entire sequence. So I go into the opposite side of the cube I'm coming out of. Like this. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew through those 3 cubes, or 3 seed beads, not cubes, and continue around the entire unit. Once you have gone all the way around and you're back in the connecting bead, you again need to sew halfway around to get into the next bead to start your next unit. So we're going to go through these 3 beads on top, and then down into the cube. We're coming out towards the 11, so we begin with our bead sequence with the 11. Pick up 11, a cube, an 11, an 8, an 11, like this. And we go back into the cube we started in. And again, secure it. And so I've sewn all the way around. I'm going to go into the 11, and into the cube. I have 5 cubes, so I know I need 1 more unit to make 6 cubes. So I'm coming out towards the sequence of 3 seed beads where I'm coming out of the cube, so I know that's what I need to start with. So I pick up an 11, 8, 11, cube, and then an 11. And then you go back into the cube. Now, I will sew back through the entire thing. Maybe. maybe. All right, get back here, you. And just continue sewing until I have secured the entire unit. Boy, clumsy girl. Okay, up into here. I'm telling you. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Okay, so now we're going to go into these 3 beads here, because we're all the way around, so we need to sew halfway around again and up into this cube. We have our entire component made. Now it's just a matter of tightening it up and then putting our embellishment with our 15 O's. So we're coming out of this cube. We're going to start going into the 11 O's on the inside of the unit. So I picked up 2, and then I'm just going to keep traveling around until I have picked up all of them. and just pull them so that they're nice and secure, look good. Let's get a little bit closer. Then we are going to go up into this cube here. Make sure you don't lose any of your tension, and then go into the 3 we originally attached this unit to. So you can see your thread bridge coming up here. Go into this 11-0 and the 8-0 and the 11-0 behind it. Now again, that's the most difficult part. There should be plenty of room in the beads. It's just that sometimes they're tight next to each other and they're at funny angles and it's hard to get through. So now that we're through this first segment that we've attached our second unit to, we are going to put a 15-0 seed bead between each segment of 311 or of 3 seed beads on top. So I've got a 15-0, and then I'm going to travel into my next set here of 3 seed beads, just like this, and I'm going to pull it down. Then pick up another 15-0 and go into the next set of the 3 seed beads. And see, you can see they're just at funny angles. So I'm going to go through 2, and then I'll go through this 11-0. And now that I've done that, I can kind of pull out to the side and I can see my division between the units. I can pick up my 15-0. I can go into the next one. And then into the next one. Now, I'm going to see if I can get through all of these. I cannot, so I'm going to pick up 2. I'm going to go ahead and change to my next color for my next unit. Like I said, I was going to do every other, but since I got carried away and did not, I will change it now, and hopefully I don't have an issue with my arrangement. You can arrange it any way you want. You can do whatever with your color scheming you would like. The stitch is going to stay the same, except for now that we're coming out this way, our unit is this direction. This time we will work this direction. So each time you have to pay attention to what direction your previous unit is at so that you can make the next one the opposite direction. So we're coming out of these 3 beads. I need to pick up 2 cubes this time, and I'm going to go with my powder blue. I'm going to pick up a cube and an 11-0 and a cube because I have my sequence of my 3 seed beads already available to me. So this is all I need. So now I am going to pick up these 3 beads and go through them. And again, I can only get through 2 because of the angle. So I'll just pull through and then I'll go through that 3rd one. Just watch your thread as you do that. It can get weird. So now I am going to sew back through this, and I like to do it 1 bead at a time so I can kind of pull it into the shape I want, since it comes out a little bit wider on the very first unit here. The beads on the top, the V shape is a little bit wider. So I do this to kind of make it a little less wide. Now I have to go back into these 3 beads on top again. See if I can get all 3 of them. And I did. So I'm back through. And you can see I have plenty of room, plenty of freedom inside the beads, which can be a big issue if you don't have that freedom. It's the angle of the beads that make it a little bit more difficult, and the fact that we're putting a 15-0 in between them, which makes it even harder. So now we're coming out of these 3, we're going into the first cube here. We want to build our unit this way, so we're going to build from this cube out. So what we're going to do is we're coming out towards the 11-0 side, we pick up a single 11-0. Then because we're going to share this cube, we only have to pick up 1 cube. Let me get my right color over here so I actually do this correctly. And I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a cube, and then my combination of 11-0, 8-0, 11-0. And that 8-0 is weird. Let me get a different one. And then I am just going to go back into the cube I'm coming out of on the opposite side. And I am going to take that off because I'm missing an 11-0. I must have dropped it, or I just didn't pick it up and I thought I did. Who knows? But I've got my 11-0, my cube. Now I need my combination of 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, and then back into my cube. Like this. And I'm going to sew through it. We'll do this complete unit, and then we are just going to go to length off camera because it is completely repetitious from this point on. You just have to make sure that you are putting your units in the proper direction to make your component as far as the direction of the C shape. So I'm just going to sew through all of these beads. And then go into this 11-0 here, up into my cube, and now I'm coming out towards my combination of 3 seed beads, so I pick those up first. So 11-0, 8-0, and 11-0, then my cube, then my 11-0, and back into the cube I'm coming out of on the opposite side. Then through the 3 on top, and then through the cube, and then through the 11-0, and then the cube, and I'm all the way around. So now I have to work halfway around to get to my cube again. So I go through these 3 on top of my unit, and then through the cube, and now I'm towards the inside of the unit. So because I am on the side with just the one 11-0 seed bead, I pick up an 11-0. Then I pick up my cube, and then I pick up my combination of 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, and go back down into the cube. Now we sew through the unit again. Very simple process. As I say that, I can't get through my 11-0. Very simple, but I can't do it. Very simple process. Very repetitious. You just have to pay attention to a few things like your angle of your components, what direction they're facing, and that's about it. I mean, the stitch is the same and it's repetitious. So now I have sewn all the way around. I have to sew back halfway through, get to my cube, and this is what I have. I have 5 beads, so I need one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need one more unit. And so I'm going to pick up an 11-0 because I'm coming out towards the set of 3. I'm going to pick up my 3 first. My 11-0, my 8-0, my 11-0, my cube, and then an 11-0. And back into the cube. Through the 3, 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, into the cube, into the 11-0, cube, and I'm secure. Now I have to sew to the cube again so that I am in position to do my next step. So through those 3 beads into the cube. Now I sew through all of my 11-0 seed beads in the center. So I will go 2 at a time just because it's easier than trying to do it all at once, but if you can do it all at once, go for it. And then I'll go through my last one here. And that's what that looks like. Get some decent tension. And now I have to sew up through this cube into these 3 again. So we're going to go up into this cube. Then we're going to try to move that little 15-0 out of the way, get into this 11-0 here, and go through the 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 we started our unit in, and begin. Make sure here you have plenty of tension on the inside, and then begin picking up your 15-0s. So I'm going to pick up a 15-0 and put it between each set. So I'm coming out of this set of 11-0, 8-0, 11-0. I'm going to go into this set of 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 and pull my bead down and continue traveling from each set of 3 seed beads and placing a 15-0 in between. And again, that's a funny angle, so I'm just going to go through 2, pick up my next 11-0. Just remember where you left off, get back in there, and then pick up your 15-0. This one on the steepest part of the curve is the one that you'll always kind of get a little issue with as far as picking up all 3 of them at the same time. So I've worked all the way around, and I cannot get through this one that's at a funny curve, so I'm going to just pick up 1 or pick up 2 and then go through the 3rd. Now, here I'm in position to pick up my cube, 11-0 cube, and start my next one. And I want to make sure once I do that, that I come out of this side of the cube so that I can make my seed this way. So I will pick those up for you real quick, and then we'll go off and do this to length. So I'm going to show you how to start this next one. We're going to pick up, I'm going to do this color again, my powder blue color again, since I messed up my intention here. Now I have to change. So I'm going to pick up a cube, and yes, a cube, and then an 11-0, and then a cube, and go back through these 3 on top here. So I have to move that 15-0 out of my way and get through these beads. Now again, funny angle, so I'm just coming out of 2 of the beads. Then I will go through this 3rd one. Then I have to sew all the way back around again to secure it. I like to do the first unit 1 bead at a time just to kind of pull it into the shape I like. And then we're going to go back into these 3 beads again. And this time I can get through all 3 because I kind of pulled that 11-0 into place when I did this unit. So that's the beginning. I'm going to come into this bead here, and I'm going to start working my unit this way. So just make sure you don't sew over to this one and start this way. Just start in the one that you are in after you have secured the entire thing. Start here, work your unit this way, and we'll be back. So as far as color scheming goes, I'm going to go ahead and try to do 2 dark, 2 light, maybe 1 dark and then 2 light. I don't know. I'm going to see how it works out. So, and I will show you when I come back. You can do it, like I said, any way you would like. So continue until you have 10 units. So as you can see, I have made, with my color scheming also, I have gone ahead and done 2 of my darker bead units and then 2 lighter bead units, 1 darker bead, 2 lighter bead, 1 darker bead, and then 1 lighter bead to kind of hold my symmetry in my color. Now, this is measuring exactly from my box clasp to the very end here. It is measuring 6 3/4 inches. By the time I put on my very end, I will have around a 7, maybe a little bit over a 7-inch bracelet. So if you need to, you can go ahead and make one less or one more unit to adjust your length. Or if you need 2 less or 2 more, do that also. But at this point, this is a medium-sized bracelet. And of course, that will depend on the size of your clasping also. So what I have done is I've gone ahead and extended my Fireline right here and made a very, very small extension so that I can get through my beads again. However, you want to have a nice long length, at least probably about 3 feet, which will be too long, but we want to make sure we have enough to do our next embellishment without having to extend, because it will be difficult to pass through your beads with an extension. So extend now, make a very small extension if you need to, if you have hardly any thread left, and we are going to put our clasping on and then do an embellishment. I'm coming out at the very end here, out of this 11-0, after doing my little embellishment of the 15-0 between the 3 bead units. However, I do not want to be coming out of this 11-0. So when you go through your very last pass, you can just go through to the 8-0 and exit. You do not have to include this last 11-0 because you'll just have to back out like I just did if you do. Now I've separated my box clasp. I have the other end of it. I took off the jump ring because I don't want to use it, and I am going to begin my clasping by picking up an 11-0, an 8-0, and an 11-0 seed bead. Excuse me, that's not what I want. I want an 11-0 and an 8-0. And then I'm going to drop that down to the 8-0 I'm coming out of. And then I'm going to pick up my clasp and go through the loop of my clasp right here. And then I am going to go through just the 8-0 seed bead here. And I'm going to hold on to that 8-0, pull my thread through, and draw everything together. And position my clasping correctly. And then I'm going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead, and I'm going to go into the other side of the 8-0 seed bead that I started in from this side. So I'm going into the opposite side of the 8-0 we are attaching to. And pull your thread through. And this is your clasping. So now you want to sew through this. I'm going to sew through it about 3 times, and then I'm going to come back, or twice more actually, and I'm going to come back and we will continue into the next step. Okay, so I went ahead and have sewn through my clasping 3 times more just to make sure that it is very secure, because this loop is thin and flat and could be somewhat sharp on the thread. So I put many passes. And yes, before a million people ask me, yes, you can use a wire guardian if you would like. That's up to you. Any modification that you want to make on your piece to personalize it, of course, is okay, and you don't need my permission. So yes, you can use a wire guardian if you would like. So now we are coming out of this 11-0 here. We're going to go down into this cube right here, right beneath our little extension for our clasping, and then we are going to go into the first 11-0 seed bead on the inside beads here, just like this. And don't pull everything out of whack, just pull your thread through gently, and then pick up the opposite color of the unit that you are in for the embellishment. So I have the light crystals. I'm going to pick up a dark crystal, and I'm coming out of the top of this 11-0 here. I'm going to go through the top towards the bottom of the 11-0 here, right there. And I am going to pull this in to the middle of my unit, just like that. Give a little tug so that you don't see the thread, and your unit will expand just a little bit so that you can accommodate that bead. And I just bent my needle like crazy, so let me straighten it out here. Size 12 beading needles just bend really easy. Okay, well, it's going to be bent. So now I am coming out of this 11-0 here. I'm going to go into this cube here. And give me 2 seconds to straighten this out because this needle is going to not work. All right, so now I'm coming out of this cube right here. Let me make sure I am in frame. And so I went from this cube into this 11-0, put a cube in the middle, went into this 11-0, out the cube, and now we're going to go into the 3 11-0s, or the 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, that we attach this unit to this unit. So we're going to go into those 3 beads. And because we sew through those more than the others, this could be kind of a pain in the rear end. So I wanted you to make sure you have your extension first of all, so you don't have to pass that through one of these. But generally, you should be able to get through fairly well. And once you're through that 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 attachment, you're going to go into the next cube on the next unit. And then you're going to go down into the 11-0 seed bead right beneath it. So down into it. And then pick up the opposite color of the unit you're in. So I'm picking up a light cube because I'm in a dark unit. And then I'm going to come up through this 11-0 and this cube on the opposite side from which I'm coming out. And I'm going to pop that cube down into the center of my unit. Just like that. It makes a nice, pretty little fan. And then we are going to go into the 3 beads that we attached to the previous unit. So if you can get all 3, great. If you can't, just go through what you can and then come back and pick up the one you left. But they should be bound together pretty well so you can pass through the 11-0, 8-0, and 11-0 that attach the 2 units. Come through that attachment and then come through your first cube, and if you can, go through the first 11-0. If you have to do them separately, do them separately. Then pick up a cube the opposite color of the unit that you are in. So I'm going to pick up a light bead and I am going to go into the 11-0 here and the cube. So I'm going from the inside of the unit here towards the outside like this. So I'm in a diagonal this way. And I am going to pull this down. Now you have to arrange everything as you do this to make sure it's in there. You get a little bit of expansion on each unit. Make sure they look nice, there's no slack, and you're not bunching your units by pulling it too tightly. This is how it's going to look. Once you do the next one, it's going to set the previous one. So make sure that one is the way you like, and then go up into the 3 attachment beads for the next unit. So 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, right here. I'll get in very close so you can see the beads I've selected. The first 3 seed beads on this unit and the last 3 on this unit. So the connecting 3 beads. And pull this through. Then we go down into the next cube and 11-0. So our movement is down towards us here. And see here, I cannot get through both. So, and it's because my needle is bent, but I'm going to go through the cube. And then I am going to go through the 11-0. Well, come here, 11-0. Here. And then I can pick up my cube. So pick up a dark one. And I will go through the 11-0 in the cube here. And we'll just do this the whole length of our bracelet. Just placing the cube the opposite color of the unit you're in. And my colors are so close to each other, you don't really see the difference that much, but I think it's enough to make a difference. And you can do it, of course, however you'd like, color scheming wise. Then we're going to go through the attaching 3 beads and move through the bracelet doing that. Once we get to the end, we will be back and we will tie off the bracelet. Okay, so as you can see, I have finished my embellishment, putting the little middle bead in each unit, and it turns out really pretty. Just make sure as you put the beads in, once you come through the next connecting beads, pull nice and tight, arrange it, make sure it looks good, and you're not either distorting it by pulling it too tight or leaving too much slack, because this can be loose in the middle if you do not adjust it. So, or it can be too tight and be weird. So make sure you adjust each one, and then once you get all the way to the end here, I'm coming out of this 11-0 seed bead after going from this 11-0 and putting my crystal in and going through this 11-0 here. And now I'm going to come up into the crystal above that 11-0 right here. And then I am going to go ahead and try to go through these 3 beads that connect to my clasping. They can be a little full, but mine seems to be passing through okay, so that's good. And then I'm just going to tie a knot right between these beads. So there's a 15-0 in my embellishment right here. I am coming out of the 11-0 here. I am going to try to go between like the cube and the 8-0 here, pass under that thread bridge, and I'm going to tie a knot. Draw that down on the thread bridge between the cube and the 11-0. Then I'm going to reposition and sew into the 11-0 and 15-0 and the next 8-0 if I can, just like this. To pull those beads back together if I tipped them or did anything weird with my knot. Let's see. Yeah, I got a funny little thing going on here. So I'm going to pull this back out. See if I can fix this. Yeah. So I'm going to pull this out. So my knot is right here. I had my thread pass through funny, but my knot is okay. So I can just sew through a couple of these again. I will rethread my needle here. And I need to go into this 15-0 seed bead. What I did was pass over it instead of go through it. So I'm between the crystal and the 11-0. I need to go into that 15-0. And all of these beads. That way I don't have a funny piece of thread there anymore. See? And now I can go into the next, I'm coming out of this 15-0. I'm going to go into the next set of 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 here and try to tie another little knot. And then I'll just sew through a few beads and cut off my thread. So I'm just going to go between this 11-0 and this crystal, grab my thread, make sure it goes down in front of that 15-0, then I'll go into the 15-0 and just find a good spot to knot. You don't have to do exactly where I'm doing it. It doesn't matter. You just have to make sure you're between the beads and not on top of them, and then just sew away from your knot a little bit, and then you can just cut it off. And I'm just going to melt that down a little bit more if I can see it. It's all right. Okay, so now I am going to back up here and show you what I've got. And that turns out really pretty. Now I have to see if it actually fits my wrist, because it might not. Who knows? You never know until the very end here. At least when I've done it and you can watch it, you can see what happened and you can adjust yours accordingly. And a lot of times I'll make 2 pieces so that I can make my second one on camera and know exactly what I'm going to end up with. But sometimes I don't want to do that, and so, you know, I'm trying to get my clasp. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to go off camera if I can't do this right now. And I will be right back. Okay, here it is. I always think a box clasp is going to be easier than a lobster claw, but it's not. I actually think it's a little harder. So here's my clasping, and this is what my bracelet looks like. Now, you could conceivably do another embellishment from 8/0 to 8/0 on each unit too if you want to stabilize them, but I think they're just fine this way. If they poke up a little bit, that's okay. And they're really not doing it that badly. I thought they might, but they're really not. It's staying together pretty nicely as far as the way it lays on my wrist, and I think it looks really pretty without the extra bunch of beads holding it together. So that's what that looks like. And I will take it off and let you look at it one more time, and we'll call this one good. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you try to make one. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please consider subscribing and liking and all those good things. That really helps my channel. Okay, see you later. Bye-bye.